Coming up next on NewsDepth, the U.S. southern border is seeing an increase in immigration. The Fed is slowing down interest rate spikes. Did you know Ohio played a role in the history of cars? And we visit a museum restoring old automobiles. NewsDepth is now. Migrant crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border are rising. Hello there, I'm Gabriel Kramer. Thank you for joining us. According to a Department of Homeland Security official, more than 8,600 people each day last week were detained at the U.S. southern border. That's up from around 3,500 daily border crossings after the expiration of Title 42 in May. Some of you might remember that earlier this year, Title 42, which restricted asylum to immigrants coming into the United States, expired along with other COVID-19 pandemic policies. With the end of Title 42, the U.S. government estimated a surge of about 150,000 immigrants crossing the southern U.S. border. But officials did not initially see as substantial an influx of immigrants as they were expecting. The busiest sectors now are Del Rio, El Paso, and the lower Rio Grande Valley in Texas, and Tucson, Arizona, each facing more than 1,000 encounters a day. The rising number of migrants coming in is causing tension in some communities. As people are being taken into custody to be processed or deported, cities are running out of space in processing centers. Some cities, like El Paso, Texas, are starting to build new facilities for migrants. Reporter Ediberto Perez spoke to El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser.
Local leaders want to prepare for future migrant surges with a new shelter. But a new law does not allow cities to shelter migrants in previously closed schools or open schools, something the city of El Paso used to do.
We have hotels available, but we don't have the schools available any longer, so we really need to be prepared. The numbers
El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser mentioned this idea of a new shelter last Monday during a city council meeting. The city is now considering a new facility to host both migrants and animal services. The main goal will be to help migrants' mental health. Asylum seekers, especially kids, will be allowed to play with the animals.
And we'll have a play area, we'll have a walk area, we'll have an area that really will help, again, our asylum seekers, but also our four-legged friends.
Mayor Leeser also told me they want to be prepared for the unknown and to not have a temporary facility like the schools the city used. They would like to have a space as a long-term solution.
Well, when we saw that we could no longer use the schools for sheltering, we said we need to see how we can do that, how we can really make sure we maximize taxpayers' dollars.
Officials have been in talks with the federal government to fund this shelter.
Thank you, Ediberto. Immigrants are facing another legal setback. A judge has ruled against the Biden administration's efforts to preserve the Obama-era program known as Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA for short. DACA is a program that provides temporary protection from deportation to undocumented immigrants who were brought to the United States as children. Although the new order won't impact those currently protected under the program, it does prevent new people from applying. Camila Bernal has more.
The success of this Mexican candy family business is in part thanks to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA.
When we got DACA, it was a boost. It was like a catalyst, and then things just happened faster. Things were easier.
Licenses, loans, leases, all possible after Ignacio Viramontes began benefiting from this Obama-era program.
These are the tomaikashis, which
now Ignacio and his two siblings benefit from DACA. They make part of the more than 580,000 so-called dreamers in the U.S., undocumented immigrants often arriving to the U.S. at a young age, eligible for work authorization and shielded from deportation. But a federal judge in Texas this week ruled that a regulation intended to preserve DACA is unlawful.
The time is running out, and I think that even if the Biden administration appeals, which I believe they will, and I think it'll go all the way up to the Supreme Court, looking at our Supreme Court and looking at the law, I think it's likely that the Supreme Court would find it unlawful, and then it's over.
Jean Reese, professor and co-director of the Immigration Clinic at USC's law school, says the ruling could force a more permanent solution.
People are reminded of the uncertainty. How much time do they have left? Years, maybe. And I think it really puts pressure on reform.
At the center of the issue is the scope of the president's authority, which is why, for years, congressional leaders have tried to come to an agreement over immigration reform and failed.
I think the agreement is there, but I think because certain factions of Congress have taken such a position against DACA that it's very hard to come back to the middle and save face.
Immigration attorney Alex Galvez says that at the end of the day, it's the beneficiaries of the program that suffer.
The Dreamers are in limbo once again. It's a political ping pong. Yes, DACA, no DACA. Yes, DACA, no DACA.
Thanks, Camila. Of course, immigrants come from all over the world. Some immigrants come to the United States seeking asylum. Asylum is the protection granted by one nation to someone who has left their native country as a refugee. As children have returned to school after summer break, schools in Maine are taking in a significant number of children from asylum-seeking families. Schools in the main cities of Lewiston, Freeport, and Sanford are welcoming more than 100 of those children. Educators only had about 2 weeks' notice that those students were enrolling. James Corrigan reports.
It's an opportunity for our district to experience diversity.
That has been the common refrain from the Maine school districts taking in significant numbers of asylum seeker children this year, mainly Lewiston and RSU 5 encompassing Freeport, which are accepting children from local hotels after they were moved from the Portland Expo, along with Sanford, where migrants have also flocked to this year. Sanford's assistant superintendent says the real challenge has been in communication and hiring extra staff.
Our outreach staff has contacted families, had in-person conversations with them, letting them know this is when school starts, this is where the bus stop is. We have brought on a new ESOL staff member. This week, as staff return, we are providing all of our staff with professional development.
Sanford will welcome 55 new migrant students this year, while Freeport will bring in 67 and Lewiston around 20. But Lewiston Superintendent Jake Langley says the real challenge for his district is the uncertainty of the hotel situation, as Lewiston's Ramada Inn will only host asylum seekers through November 1st as it stands.
If the students happen to be displaced because of the agreement timelines at the Ramada, we're happy to keep them here and work on things that we can work on to help facilitate that. But I really feel for the families.
The Casco Bay Inn in Freeport will be holding asylum seekers for up to a year. Its school district, RSU 5, is also expanding staff with a new language teacher and ed tech position approved.
These children are tremendous benefit for the RSU. They make our community diverse and more well-rounded.
Thank you, James. And that brings us to our write-in question. If you were welcoming a student from another country to your school, what would you say is the coolest thing about your school? Jump online to our inbox forum to send in your answers. Last week, we asked you to share your tips for dealing with stress. Let's see what you had to say by opening up our inbox. Oliviana from Meadowlawn Intermediate in Sandusky wrote, Dear NewsDepth, I deal with stress in multiple ways, such as deep breathing, fidgeting in other ways. Sometimes I turn on a movie just to wind down and relax. Sometimes I also just lay down and try to take my mind off of whatever I was stressed for. I also listen to music to calm down. Aiden from Claggett Middle School in my hometown Medina said, Dear NewsDepth, when I'm stressed, I listen to music and go outside and play basketball, or I'll hang out with a friend. Sometimes when I'm stressed, I'll just take a breather and try to forget about what happened. And congrats on being the new host. Aiden, thank you so much, and go Bees. Monroe from Golden DeWitt Elementary School in Cuyahoga Falls has someone to rely on. Some ways that I deal with stress is going to my school counselor, because if I'm having a hard time, I can rely on her. Reasons why I rely on her is because she listens and tells me what I can do to fix my situation. Other ways I can deal with stress is writing. Writing it out helps me in getting my situation off my mind. If I'm in school, I like to walk around the building. In conclusion, there are things I do in a situation where I'm stressed. Nikunj from Strongsville Middle School in Strongsville finds relaxation in movement. I deal with stress by doing the pretzel pose, hot cocoa breathing, talking with someone that I trust, especially my parents, listening to music, reading a book, and pencil sketching. The pretzel pose breathing is my #1 way to calm down and deal with stress. The pretzel pose makes me feel comfy and relaxed, which happens faster than the other things I do to deal with stress. Then I can be mindful and make better decisions because of the pretzel pose. And Aisha from Cheshire Elementary in Delaware, Ohio, takes a minute to find calmness. Here are a couple ways I calm down. One way I calm down is by taking deep breaths. Another way I calm down is by thinking about something that makes me feel happy or comfortable. For me, I like to think about the beach or the pool. The last way I have is thinking about my friends and siblings and what fun things we do with each other. These are a couple things I do to calm myself down a bit. Thank you everyone for sending in your stress-free tips. I definitely feel a little calmer after taking some deep breaths like a lot of you recommended. Now heading back to the news. The U.S. Federal Reserve concluded a meeting last week without another hike in interest rates. Interest rates are the extra fees you pay when you borrow money from a bank. The increase in July raised the lending rate the highest it's been in 22 years. Could the Fed be done raising rates, or is the battle against inflation still raging? Gloria Pazmino takes a look at the economic road ahead.
The U.S. Federal Reserve hitting pause on interest rate hikes as the central bank waits to see what impact previous increases have had on the economy.
We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening have yet to be felt.
But the break doesn't mean the Fed is done yet.
The possibility of another rate hike to come in either November or December is still very much on the table.
Though inflation is steadily slowing and the unemployment rate is relatively low, the U.S. economy is still contending with challenges that could hamper progress, namely high gas and energy prices.
If those prices are sustained at high levels, they can spill over into the prices of other goods and services.
Another factor at play, a looming government shutdown, with Congress showing no signs of reaching a federal budget deal by the deadline at the end of this month.
If they persist for any length of time, it really starts to act as a pretty heavy drag on the economy.
And while the Fed may be taking its foot off the gas for now, Bankrate.com's Greg McBride says not to expect lower interest rates anytime soon.
The Fed is going to leave interest rates at an elevated level for a period of time to truly make sure that this inflation issue has been eradicated.
Thank you, Gloria. The labor union called the United Auto Workers is on strike against automobile manufacturers General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. Although there is still no deal in sight, negotiations started last week. Mike Valerio takes a look at where things stand.
Weekend negotiations saw little progress between the United Auto Workers and the big three automakers.
We still have a long way to go.
While the strike remains targeted at one plant for each company, the union warns it could intensify efforts this week if its demands are not met.
We'll see how things progress the next few days, and if we have to amp up pressure, that's what we're going to do.
Top of the list for workers, an immediate 20% raise, followed by 4 additional 5% raises over the 4-year deal. All 3 companies have countered with a 20% raise during the life of the contract with an immediate 10%.
We gave up a lot in 2008 to help Ford out during the recession. We didn't get any raises for 3 contracts. So it's time for us to get something.
Analysts say the U.S. economy is getting bruised, but the strike's impact isn't likely to push the nation into a recession.
It would depend very much on how long the strike lasts and exactly who's affected by it.
The spillover is already impacting non-striking workers, with both GM and Ford announcing temporary layoffs on Friday. Suppliers working with the big 3 could also face layoffs soon. Impacted states like Michigan will see a decrease in tax revenue, and buying a car could get more expensive.
The United Auto Workers Union is expected to expand its strike against GM and Stellantis, but said that progress in negotiations with Ford means it won't expand the number of Ford workers on the picket lines. The last story talked a lot about the role of Michigan in the automobile industry. Detroit is still headquarters for a lot of car companies. It's the hometown of Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motors. But did you know that Ohio played a big role in the development of cars? For this week's No Ohio, Mary drives through the history of the automobile industry, starting with some of the first cars that were invented right here in our Buckeye State. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Bet you didn't know that Ohio played a big role in the development of cars. Get ready to rev your engines, because I'm going to race through Ohio's long car history. While the car itself wasn't invented in Ohio, we certainly helped shape it into the vehicle we know today. This includes the invention of the first gas-powered American car. In 1891, John William Lambert of Ohio City built the vehicle in secret. Decades before, his father had brought him to see a gas-powered engine, and that invention stuck in his mind. So when he heard about cars being built in Germany, he put the two together. Here's his first car, or horseless carriage as they were called at the time. You can see the gas engine beneath the seat. It might look pretty simple compared to what we have today, but at the time, Lambert's invention was almost too modern. He wasn't even able to find any buyers for his car. This first model had 2 forward speeds and no reverse. It could reach top speeds of up to a brisk 5 miles per hour. Okay, not so fast, but still. The car had 2 big wheels in the back and 1 small one in the front. This wasn't the most stable design, so his next model included 2 front tires. Over the years, Lambert's invention developed more and more. Of course, with cars come accidents, and unfortunately, Lambert is also credited with the first automobile accident in America. In the same year that he invented his 3-wheeled car, he crashed it. While out on a drive with a friend, Lambert hit a tree root, and his vehicle went out of control and it crashed into a hitching post. Luckily, there were no major injuries. This leads us to our next Ohio involvement with the automobile: insurance. Another early car inventor, Gilbert Loomis, here's one of his vehicles, purchased the very first automobile insurance. In 1897, he bought a $1,000 policy from Travelers Insurance Company in Dayton. This would cover the costs of any damage caused by him getting in an accident. He was well ahead of his time because nowadays, auto insurance is required by law for every driver. By the early 1900s, cars had caught on, and that is much to the credit of Clevelander Alexander Winton. Winton started a bicycle company in Cleveland in 1891, but by 1897 he had switched to motor carriages. His company was the first to sell vehicles to the public, starting with the Winton 6. This vehicle was as advanced as they came, and it was able to drive all the way across the country. The more popular cars became, the more competition there was among inventors and manufacturers. Other Ohio companies set out to best Winton. For example, the Packard Motor Car Company was founded in Warren, Ohio in 1899 by brothers James and William Packard. Here's their very first car, the Model A. For a few years, they built their luxury cars right in their hometown before moving operations to Detroit. Packards were so swanky that they were owned by the rulers of several countries, including Japan, Switzerland, and China. Here is the Packard of His Highness the Maharaja of Gwalior in India. Other early car companies found great success in Ohio, including the Peerless Motor Company, with their huge manufacturing plant in Cleveland. Like Packard, they too produced mainly high-end vehicles. Also in Ohio was the Baker Motor Vehicle Company, which sold Thomas Edison his first car. In the 1910s, they made a car that could reach speeds of 75 miles per hour and included the first seat belts. While these companies are long gone, you can see that the features they developed paved the way for the cars we have today. Oh, and Ohio is still one of the top spots in the nation for automobile manufacturing and assembly. So yeah, Ohio is definitely car country.
Thank you, Mary. The Crawford Auto Aviation Museum began as a personal crusade to save historical vehicles from the crusher. Today, part of the collection is on display in University Circle on the east side of Cleveland, while dozens of volunteers maintain the rest at a facility in Summit County. In this edition of Sketchbook, we visit the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum as they make old cars new again while also making memories.
Worked for Lubrizol, and I worked for 35 years there and retired in 2009. And this is my retirement job. I'm the volunteer coordinator, so I kind of keep track of people's names, addresses, phone numbers, making sure we stay in touch with people. And we've got a lot of people that may not be engineers and that kind of stuff, but they have a love for cars.
I'm a retired rabbi and a part-time student in the auto tech program at Cuyahoga Community College. I began helping out here at the Crawford as part of my college internship. So I'm really learning not only the basics of automobiles, but also how these cars are cared for, how they worked, how the automobiles were developed, and the history of the automobiles, as well as the equipment that went into them.
My name is Larry Davis. I'm the collection manager of the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum.
Mr. Crawford started his collection in 1943. When he was looking to retire that facility, he donated them to us. This is our restoration and preservation facility for the Crawford. So it's 60,000 square feet. It's really a great blessing for us. A lot of museums do not have a facility like this. And we're able to work on our vehicles. Our job here is to basically make the cars safe, able to drive. We take them to shows, we take them out to different programs. So we have 30 vehicles that are over 100 years old, all the way up to things like this 69 Camaro right here. I have approximately 52 volunteers who work for us of various backgrounds. We get together once or twice a week. We take care of our vehicles. We preserve them, restore them. If we've been given vehicles that need work.
I'm a lifelong car restorer and collector, so it became a nice retirement job. We always have a couple fire extinguishers ready to go. But now it runs pretty well.
I was a dentist, practiced for 45 years, and was always interested in automobiles. Just a great place to volunteer. They'll let you do just about anything that you're interested in doing, and there's always somebody up here that knows something that you don't know. You get in a problem, you ask somebody, and they all have ideas, and in between maybe 6 or 8 guys, one guy's right out of the bunch. And the trick is to figure out who it is before you break something.
It just keeps me busy. It keeps my mind going. It keeps me active. I love the guys that I'm working with. They're tremendous. They're just the variety of talent that's here and the experiences they've had, and especially when you talk to people that have been here long enough to know that, oh yeah, I remember when we took that car to that show.
And it has been wonderful to develop a group of friends who not only are teaching me and have wonderful patience with me, but there's a sense of camaraderie, a devotion not just to the cars, but to the mission of Crawford that is here among the volunteers.
One of our best assets is the group of people that we have put together. Everyone gets along, they have a great time. So I'm very blessed and very thankful to have them.
Special thanks to our arts producer, Jean Marie Papoy, for sharing that story with us. Well, all of this talk about cars has made me curious. How do you normally get to school? Head to our poll page to vote in this week's poll. You can choose between I ride in a car to school, I take public transportation or the bus, I ride my bike to school, or I walk to school. Last week for our poll, we wanted to know what you think is most important in school aside from curriculum, and the results are in. 32% of you said you cared about emotional wellness. I can see that. We got a lot of letters this week about dealing with stress. 23% of you said you think the faculty or your teachers and administrators is most important. Coming in close in third place with 21% of the vote is accessibility. 18% of the votes went to extracurriculars, and with just 6% of the votes is facilities. Email is a fast way to stay in touch, and believe it or not, here at NewsDepth headquarters, we get about 1,000 emails each week from students across Ohio. And I can promise you, our team reads every single one. NewsHound makes sure of it. I bring this up because we recently met a group of Girl Scouts who are using a different form of written communication to make new friends and make a difference. I'm talking about Girl Scout Troop 70178 from Bay Village. They've been exchanging letters with a group of senior citizens as pen pals, and they've been awarded this week's APlus Award. If you're wondering what a pen pal is, it's a person that you regularly exchange written letters with through the mail. Very exciting. Who doesn't love getting mail? Well, these young women started writing letters to a group of community members at a life care center of Elyria Way back in 2020. One of their parents told us that it was a great way for them to make connections with people they might not have met otherwise. And it was great for their letter writing partners to meet new people as well. The girls were able to really work on their writing and communication skills. After several months of exchanging letters, the girls were able to visit their partners and help them plant flowers. I know what you're wondering, did they bring Girl Scout cookies? As a matter of fact, they did. The Scouts told us that it was a great day of planting flowers, sharing cookies, and hearing stories. Some of the seniors were Girl Scouts when they were younger and had a blast talking about all their experiences and camping trips. The Scouts, who are all now in 5th grade, told us that they are really proud of the community they were able to build. Their Scout leader told us that she was very proud of how respectful the students were and the bravery they showed in making new friends. This week's APlus Award goes to Girl Scout Troop 70178 and their pen pals for making new friends, sharing new experiences, and making each other smile. I'm hoping we get invited for the next flower planting cookie party. Just don't invite NewsHound, he'd eat pretty much everything. Now, speaking of NewsHound, let's check in to see what he has for this week's petting zoo. Hey NewsHound, what are you up to today? Just out for a walk? I trust you already got this week's petting zoo ready, right? Look at him go. I can't believe he forgot this week. Okay, good. He found a story about an alligator with no upper jaw being rescued. To check out how the alligator is adapting to gator paradise, click the petting zoo button on our website. Thanks as always, NewsHound. And that's all the time we have for today. But we still want to hear from you, and there are plenty of ways for you to stay in touch with us. You can write to us. We're at 1375 Euclid Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio. Our zip code here is 44115. You can email us at newsdepth@ideastream.org, or you can tweet us. Our handle is @NewsDepthOhio. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gabriel Kramer. We'll see you back here next week.
NewsDepth is made possible by a grant from the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation.